and he made a comment about something to the effect of, you have to make sure Donna's in the podcast because she's the only one funny. To which I said, we're ending this call now.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims from HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me as always is Donna Grindle, Card and Compliance. How are you, Donna?
I am happy to say I'm finally getting well.
I know you've been sick for a while.
Yeah.
And you haven't felt well either.
No, we couldn't record last week. I was just miserable, and then couldn't record this week because I lost my voice. So, hey, it's time to try the live show.
Let's do this. So this is, for those who are listening, you missed it. For those who are here, welcome. This is our very first live broadcast in, I guess, webinar format, really. But for those of you who want to see how beautiful Donna is, there you go. You get to see her in all her glory.
And hear all of David's toys going off.
Yeah, I know. You know, I'm going to forget to do something.
Hey, I'm not the one that bought special lighting for the day.
Look, you
we know who the vain one is in this pair.
No, it's trying to get rid of those dark circles around my eyes from being up all night dealing with stuff that you throw at me.
Like, figure out how to do this, David.
Yeah. You like that it's your opportunity to do that. So today we're going to look at some press releases, some resolutions, and more resolutions. And then we're going to tell you what we think, whether you like it or not.
There you go. No different than any other time, right?
Yeah, that's true.
All right, then. Let's see if we can be more lively, David.
No, I need to. Where's my coffee?
Yeah, do something.
So one of the things that's happened since we last recorded is that the OCR has started warning that there are people that are sending out fake HIPAA audit emails, which is kind of funny in and of itself because I wouldn't think people want to pay attention to the real ones, much less the fake ones.
Well, yeah, and what was interesting is they said it's a warning about a phishing email, and then they sent out an additional one after that saying, oh, by the way, we really are doing business associate audits. So that was pretty interesting.
So that was a fake email, but there was some truth in it.
Yeah. Well, and then the thing was it sent you to a site with someone selling security services for HIPAA, which,
Anybody we know?
Well, it kind of it made them less than happy, I can assure you that. I wonder what's happening to that company.
Getting audited.
I know. Because, we've talked about it before. They don't endorse any product or any certification, any of that stuff. And here you got a vendor kind of implying that you're going to be audited, so you really need to go and get our services. I'm sure that you don't want to make lawyers that mad. And the fact that they called it a phishing email because they were trying to get contact information, it doesn't appear that it was actually like the malicious type that we normally see, trying to steal money and stuff. But I guess it was trying to steal money if it was implying, it's fraud. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen to them, but I doubt it'll be public. Then shortly thereafter, I got an email with a company proud to say that they were officially HIPAA compliant. And you know how that goes.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one, let's see here, is the OCR released a bulletin on considering two-factor authentication and all those other multi-factor authentication things within your risk analysis.
Yes. Hit it, Dave.
That's it. What you want me to do? You want me to explain
you
what it is?
You got too many toys in front of you. You're not working with me here. So OCR's notice that came at the end of, it was their October newsletter, said that you should consider multi-factor authentication in your risk analysis, which I thought was kind of interesting because, number one, That's the first time I've ever seen them actually talking about multi-factor authentication. So they did try to explain it. And they talked about, it's something something you are, or something you have, and a combination of those two. So it's two-step verification, two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, whatever it is. They're encouraging you to consider it in your risk analysis. So what does that say? Well, that says we really want you to think about doing this. And if we come in and find that you could have been doing it and you didn't even think about it, we're not going to be happy. What are your thoughts on multi-factor?
I think it's a good idea. It's one of those things where we talk about all the time. So for those of you who are new, it's the whole security's not convenient, and multi-factor authentication is certainly not convenient. I know even when I log into my Google Mail sometimes and it's like, oh, we're sending something to your phone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to get into my email. It is. It's not convenient, but it is necessary, and it helps a lot to reduce the security risk.
Well, and just for those who've never done it, the inconvenient part is it does send something either to a Google authenticator, or LastPass has an authenticator. There's a lot of authenticators out on your phone, and it sends this code, and then you have to enter that code after you enter your password, which is very inconvenient. But the value is you have to have both to get in. So even if I were able to hack your password, I couldn't get in without also having your phone and being able to get into your phone, which you should have password protected.
Right. And some of the authenticators are getting a little bit more friendly with have like an approve or deny type button instead of having to get the code and then punching the code in and all that. So that's certainly more convenient.
Yeah, the LastPass authenticator is doing that. So I've been playing with it, but I can't figure out all the intricacies. But it is nice because you just tap approve and you're done. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting more so that I don't know of many of the healthcare applications that have 2FA built in, or 2SV or MFA built in.
Yeah.
But we're going to see more and more of it. I think you're going to see it as an option. Mm-hmm. And once you see the options start to be deployed, then that's where it'll really come back. So it's at least starting the process, but I don't think it's something that you're going to see rapidly. But everybody should start trying it on some important stuff where you have it, particularly if you use like Gmail, or, you can do it with your LinkedIn. That's an important place to do it so someone doesn't hack your LinkedIn. You can do it with Facebook, even those. So I would definitely look into doing it on your email and your social media, if nothing else right now. And know that it's inconvenient. Security is not convenient.
Necessary, but not convenient.
It's not optional.
So we have a question that came in, which is one of the benefits of doing a live show.
Oh.
And basically it's a question from Janet Kennedy, our old friend, Janet. David's good. Don't have the episode in front of me, but Janet was on one of our episodes in the past. She also has a podcast, Get Social Health. And Janet's asking about if you have any idea of how many surprise HIPAA audits have already happened.
Well, they had already told us that they did, I think, 170, 180, somewhere in that range of audits for 167. I've been notified by my team who's listening in. 167 audits that were done on covered entities, and they then were going to do the remaining number up to 200, and they said it would be 200 to 210, somewhere in there, on business associates, and that was the reason they did the follow-up email about the phishing campaign with OCR, was to say, by the way, we are really doing these, and if you got one, don't ignore that one, because business associates are doing the desk audits now. So I thought that was interesting because they said they were going to do them in November, and haven't really seen a lot more since then. So it's going to be about 200 and some odd in the first pass of desk audits, where they request information. You got 10 days to give it back to them. Then they review it, and then they tell you what they think. and you get a chance to reply, and then it's done.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2017 is when they start the on-site random audits. So everybody that was in the pool to be audited for desktop will go back into the pool to be audited for on-site. So it could be your covered entity or your business associates could get hit for both or only one.
Okay. And is that happening all over the country?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, only in the Carolinas, David.
I'm just asking the questions. You sure? Because, there's been a lot of activity around the Atlanta area by other people. So.
Really. So, yeah.
So Janet asked another question about if you've heard of any other good social media HIPAA stories or anything that's happened around social media.
Well, you and I exchange them from time to time where we see people having conversations on social media.
Yeah, I sent you a couple the other day.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, are those a fine line or not? And but more or less, you've got the ones that I know of are not things I should talk about. But I did hear where a doctor really went off on a patient who posted something on social media complaining about their visit to an office. And the doctor just went off on the patient about the treatment and all this, and you weren't following what I told you. And and the people that were telling me about this wanted me to know that they had fired that particular doctor after that occurred. But that's all I can say about that. But it's at the point where you really have to train those physicians in a large group where you go in and there's owner physicians and employee physicians, and everybody's able to post on the Facebook page or the LinkedIn page or whatever. You're going to run into those kind of problems. So you really got to lock that down. And we talked about that in our social media episode of you need to control who's doing that stuff because, people, they forget that everybody else can see what's going on. So definitely not a good thing. And as I said, it was funny that they're telling me about it, and my face was apparently going pale. And then they were like, "Oh, well, we fired him a long time ago. we just wanted you to know that happened a while back."
Just in case it comes up.
Yeah.
Just want to let you know.
Yeah, we're confessing now. So it's good to feel like you're sitting in a confessional sometimes, but others you do get that look on your face like, "You did what? Say what?" Anyway, so there you go.
Well, I think you'll see more and more, especially since practices are getting engaged on social media. I'm sure that there's a lot of violations that go on out there that we don't hear about. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering when OCR and the powers that be will start patrolling the social media platforms. But I do see, now I'm sure you see this too, Donna, on certain platforms, I'm seeing, especially like on Reddit, people will post things like, "Is this a HIPAA violation?" And it'll give some details or sometimes screenshots or whatever. So the general public is out there looking for, is this a violation?
Yeah.
Yeah. The funny thing is, a lot of times is this a HIPAA violation and can I be awarded some money for it or something?
Oh, yeah,
so they're just looking for some way to create a lawsuit, but not necessarily going to happen that way.
I get a lot of those because I'm active in the Quora, Quora, question or answer, on that site, and I answer a lot of HIPAA questions there. And it's kind of interesting because people will ask, "Is this a HIPAA violation?" and are they allowed to do that? So people really want that information. So that tells you they're starting to understand what you're supposed to do and not, and ask those questions. So, and a lot of times it's people who are really concerned about their privacy and not wanting, they don't want things exposed. We'll say. But I did see a fun one recently where somebody said, "I can't figure out who the authority entity is for HIPAA. So is there like a certification I can get from somebody or what?" I'm like, "Oh, you got a lot to learn." Let me just start with this. Here's where you need to go.
Yeah, sure you can. There's people everywhere saying they're HIPAA certified.
But if you don't even know if you can't even figure out HHS and OCR, you're a long way from being able to do something like a certification. I don't even, even the ones that are not the ones we're big fans of. I don't see you could even just, I'm a technical person. I can pass this test.
Mm-hmm.
So yes. Which goes back to the OCR doesn't endorse or support any vendors or third parties.
Mm-hmm. Except our podcast.
Oh, God. And there we go.
Anyway, so on to more resolutions. So the resolutions just keep on coming in for this year.
The hits just keep on coming.
So the total for this year is at 14. Is that correct?
I believe
so. Which is more than twice as much as were from the previous year.
Oh, yeah. And see, now we're on video, and I can't feel like I can just root around like I always do.
Why not? Go ahead.
Anyway, yeah, 6. Oh, see, he's such a goober. Anyway, so, and that as a Southerner, you just got to know what that is. Goober, Gomer, whatever. So 6 was the highest number that they had done prior to this year. And we talked about how much more is going on. And they've done 1 or 2, at 14. Let's do the math, David. They haven't done one in December, but at 14, that's more than one a month.
So I'm carried 12. Yes, it is more than one a month.
So that's they're definitely taking action, and we're seeing it. And the big difference when I was charting this for a presentation, and to see the number of dollar amounts when you compare that prior years, the max was like $6 million for the year, and now they're pushing $24 million. So 23,723,7. Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're getting close to 24 million. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more. We usually see them in December anyway. Mm-hmm. In previous years, you've always seen them try to close stuff out. But the important thing to note is they're still closing out stuff. And the ones that we're going to talk about in a second, they go back to 2012. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen really anything of any substance from 2015 yet at all.
Right.
And what's even more scary, they investigate everything over 500. That's a guaranteed. They're going to do an investigation. And now they're going to start investigating things that are under 500.
Right.
They're evaluating those for the canary in the mine, which is kind of fun. But anyway, the other thing I was looking at is the number of breaches over 500 that have been reported on the wall of shame. Mm-hmm. And OCR doesn't call it that, but everybody else does.
Somebody started it.
They don't want to call it that, but that's what everybody else calls it. And last year, there were like 270 is what it ended up being. 3 of them being that giant payer, the Anthem breach, which is 3 different payers were involved in that, and it was up to almost 100 million people between the 3 of them. So, but 270 reported, and so far we're like at 290 something for 2016, and they haven't even gotten to the 2015s yet. And now we're doing breaches over 500. Getting up towards 300 of them this year. So, as when they asked Devin McGraw how many breaches were going to be reported, she says we don't have any final numbers yet, but her eyes get really big, and she says it's going to be huge.
It's already big.
So it's going to be a huge number. So it'll be interesting to hear when the deadline. And for those of you who haven't reported breaches under 500. You have until, it's essentially a certain number of days after the end of the year, but basically you have until the end of February to get any breaches under 500 reported.
So another question that came in is about the difference between breaches, or is there a difference when it comes to how they handle ransomware attacks versus internal breaches?
Well, the ransomware stuff, we've talked about it repeatedly, and it's a huge topic this year especially. And when you look at the numbers, ransomware across the board has exploded. Just in the first quarter, ransom payments, according to the FBI, and these are things that are just reported to the FBI, and you know a lot of those don't get reported. The FBI in the first quarter had already logged about $290 million in ransom payments. And in 2015, the whole year, they logged 24 million. I know. Bang! So that's what prompted, shortly after that, in April, they had the big ransomware attack in Hollywood with the Presbyterian Hospital. And they were turning patients away, sending patients to other hospitals, canceling stuff. They were down for a week and couldn't do anything. I mean, their contingency plan wasn't working. Their backups couldn't be done. And they paid the ransom. And that's what prompted the ransomware guidance from OCR in July, which has created a little bit of mud in the water. Because basically what they're saying is you better not just assume that it was ransomware and nothing happened. You should be able to prove there was no exfiltration. There you go. Exfiltration of data, or that there were no additional things, backdoors or something dropped off, because that does happen as well. During some of these ransomware attacks, it keeps you busy worrying about everything getting encrypted while they drop off some other malware and allow it to do what across your network?
Propagate.
I didn't want to steal your propagate opportunity. So the big thing is with the ransomware now, you need to do the forensics. You absolutely can't just say, well, we got our data back, so everything's good and there was no breach. So they want you to show you've done the proper 4-factor assessment and you can show in detail within a reasonable assurance that nothing else has happened. So you can't just blow it off. And we haven't really had any of those questions brought up yet before an investigation or an administrative judge where we know exactly how that's going to fall. But I do know of several ransomware attacks where we've been involved. And, taking the time to do the forensics, which is also not cheap, is really important. And more than likely, if you can't prove those things, or if even worse, you do find there was exfiltration in those things, then it goes in as like any other breach over 500. It's just a huge breach. The internal stuff, when you have stuff that happens internally, generally those are less than 500. Before they didn't get an investigation. But now, like August, they announced that they're going to start evaluating whether or not, if you have a ton of under 500, maybe they should be looking at you. Or if you have an incident under 500 you report that implies something else is going on, maybe we should look at you. So they're evaluating all of those as well now. And so before, yes, they did treat them differently a little bit, but now not so much, supposedly.
All right, very good. So the resolution that we talked about a while ago, or didn't necessarily talk about in depth, but there's one from 2012, and you want to talk about the St. Joe's that happened in October?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because it did talk about a hybrid entity, which we've never really talked about that concept before. Because generally, we're expecting much smaller entities, but more and more we're going to find the hybrid designation that companies will want to do that. And basically what they're saying is that our business covers multiple areas and only part of it is involved in healthcare. So we're only going to apply our HIPAA standards and controls to a section of the company that we designate as the HIPAA part. And then we designate everything else as not that, and we divide the two as far as security and controls and all of that kind of stuff, which is when you look at a university with a teaching hospital and those kind of things, it's really a big thing, which is how this happened. So St. Joe's had designated themselves as a hybrid entity and said all of these parts are not HIPAA. And they apparently, they left something out. Oh, wait. Is this the one? Did I get them messed up? Oh, yeah, I did. I got them messed up. The other one's the hybrid. Yeah.
Oh, we can talk about that one since you're already on
We'll
it.
talk about that one. That's UMass is the hybrid one. So we can go ahead and talk about that. That came in November.
And that's back from 2013.
Right.
So they're finally up to 2013.
Yeah, they're hitting a couple of those. So the hybrid entity deal is when they designated which areas needed to be covered by HIPAA, they left out their Center for Language, Speech, and Hearing. I don't know what it does or why it was part of HIPAA, but it didn't have all of the security controls in it. Mm-hmm. And they had PHI of 1,670 individuals on computers in that center that were then infected with malware that was a remote access Trojan. So that says, oh, by the by, we can get in. Yeah. And there was an improper disclosure made there. So their situation, that's the first time they've really brought out a hybrid entity that didn't properly designate their division. And so, of course, they had a violation for the improper disclosure. They also had a violation for no risk analysis until 2015. They had no security measures in place in the center where they hadn't, because that center wasn't part of HIPAA. So it was like they didn't do HIPAA there. So they had that violation. And then they did the hybridization incorrectly. So that was a violation. So they had 4 violations. Their fine was $650,000. So, ouch. And a 2-year cap.
Yeah.
And we know about the caps. So it was a pretty standard cap. A lot of times the corrective action plans, and we've talked about that, they're pretty standard. You know, you've got to do a risk analysis, risk management, policy and procedure, training. Yeah, it's what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. We want you to do HIPAA so much that we're going to confirm every step of the way.
If you want to know if you're doing it right, just get a cap on you.
Yeah. Bump. So, but there's that one. And then we can go back to St. Joe's, which is the other one. St. Joe's, as part of their meaningful use program, installed a new server for file sharing. And I mean, you and I can guess from a technical standpoint what was in there. My guess is it was something with SharePoint on it. I don't know about you, but all they told us is that the server purchased to store these files included a file sharing application whose default allowed anyone with internet connection to access them. So they put this thing in, and it's able to be indexed by Google. Mm-hmm. You know, and if it's Google, it's all the other search engines. And it sat out there with PDF files that had PHI for 31,800 individuals for a year, whole year, before anyone noticed it. So they reported it on the day after they found it, because it says they found it on February 13th, 2012. Mm-hmm. And it was out there since February 1st, 2011. So I'm not quite sure how they found it, but I wouldn't want to be that person that day. You know, there's part of you that feels really good because you found the problem and you're going to fix it. And then there's part of you that, can you imagine? Because you know it was a tech nerd that had to find it. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it wasn't a complaint, and they didn't mention that it was a complaint, and that the way that it happened, it looks like, they found it themselves. But the violations that they got hit with, of course, is the impermissible disclosures for over 1 year. So remember, for every day, that's a violation.
So how many is that?
31,800 people a day for 1 year. They had no risk analysis done from 2010 to 2012 on any of the servers or changes they made to the network. And this is something that we're really trying to get out there a lot more, is to say that risk analysis is not that one thing. You should do a whole bunch of little ones and then one big one. Mm-hmm. So the one big one is your whole entity. but you're going to put in a new server or you're going to put in a new workstation. You should have things that evaluate what could go wrong. And so they didn't do that. And then they failed to, how did it say it? Let's see. Satisfactorily conduct an accurate and thorough analysis of the potential risk and vulnerabilities to the EPHI held by St. Joseph Hospital. So, so they got hit twice. One is they weren't looking at the individual devices when they rolled out the new server. The other is they hadn't really looked at everything. So they got 2 there, plus the ones for the impermissible disclosures. And so you add all those up, and, the way we know the numbers work, that could be massive. So the fact that they settled for $2,140,500, while it sounds big as the headline, they're really getting off easy compared to what the civil money penalties would have been.
Right.
And then, of course, they have a 3-year cap. So there's 3 years. They're on top of them.
Yeah. That's where the cost really comes in.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, the cost, the biggest problem is that cost comes in when you're doing the work, slamming it in and having to get it done so fast because you didn't do it over the time period that you had.
Right.
And that's a big thing because we often have people who are like going off on us about, I can't believe I have to do all of this. And I'm like, you were supposed to be doing it for 10 years. So, I'm sorry you didn't do it for those previous 10 years, but that doesn't mean that you just never have to do it. I mean, it was voluntary and you chose not to volunteer.
That's one way to look at it.
That's right. Now it's no longer voluntary. You can't just go about it a slow way. So anyway, there you have it.
All right, cool. So we still have some more questions coming in. I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but I do want to give you the opportunity to tell us what you think about HIPAA in 2017, the audit program enforcement and the like.
Well, I've been hit with that a lot lately. What do you think is going to happen? First of all, the audit program, we already talked about those are already happening, the desk ones. The plan for doing the on-site ones is going to happen in the first quarter. And I can assure you HIPAA audits is not even close to the top of the list of things for them to evaluate in the first 100 days.
Mm-hmm.
So unless they put off the on-site audits, which, everything's been planned, but you never know. I don't anticipate they would put that off. They would complete the program and nothing's going to change that because the majority of the people in OCR are just going to keep doing their jobs. Mm-hmm. There's a possibility, but the desktop audits, those are done. Those are a done deal. And enforcement, because we did have a client call us where they had a doctor go off and say, we don't have to do this because HIPAA's going away. And you and I have talked about that before. It's not part of Obamacare. It goes back to 1996. So going away is not something that you can easily do. It's not an executive order. It's in the law. It's been updated in the law. It has bipartisan support for cybersecurity is not new. In fact, it's one of the areas where you kind of expect it to actually get stronger because of the number of complaints that have been received from Congress on both sides of the aisle and the critical reports on lack of enforcement creating all of these breaches. And frankly, name one politician that would be willing to say we don't need to enforce cybersecurity protections for patient information.
I'm
especially
not sure.
after all these breaches. So, from a political standpoint, it'd be kind of hard to say we're not going to protect your privacy.
Right.
So, I don't see it going away. I mean, first of all, that's a huge undertaking to reverse the law of HIPAA. You can't just do that with a stroke of a pen. And secondly, you're telling the citizens who, are already, as we talked about earlier, asking questions and worried about this. You're telling the citizens, we don't care. We're not going to make them do it.
So what we said earlier in the year about no matter who gets elected, HIPAA's not going anywhere.
I don't see it. Well, and even, in the debates, they both in the debates agreed something has to be done with cybersecurity. It's a major problem. So to turn around after everything that's happened with cybersecurity, especially with all the numbers we talked about for this year and the number of attacks that are going on, and healthcare is now the number one attacked industry, to turn around and say, well, we're not going to enforce any kind of standards for protecting it, even though it's the number one attack. I just don't see how from any standpoint that makes sense.
No.
But again, a lot of this year hadn't made sense. So I don't know. I don't get it. So
yeah, I did hear something on the news this week actually that was talking about cybersecurity and the government stance on it, and basically the outgoing administration telling the incoming administration that you better focus on it and hire a bunch more people because it's going to be something that probably is going to define this administration unless something else happens. But it's kind of looking like this is going to be the administration that's going to have to deal with cybersecurity in a way that no other one has.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a major issue. And to say that we're going to reduce the requirements just doesn't align with the reality of the world.
Right.
Now, they may change them. I could see HIPAA being morphed, the security rule being morphed over to the National Cybersecurity Framework, but that's already been suggested, and that's already a discussion that's in play. So I don't see that. That's not going to change anything really.
All right. For those of you who are joining us live, I did put a poll up. So if you'll click on the polls tab, we're asking the question of, should we continue doing live shows in 2017? Yes, no, or maybe. So if you take a second. Maybe
if you bring in somebody else.
Yeah, take a second to answer that. I'm sure this being our first one, we'll, maybe the format will change or maybe we'll do other things. But a lot of this has been really trying to figure out the platform and what it can do and all that. So it's been interesting. I did realize that somehow, I don't know how it happened, but everybody that came in as David. So when they're posting questions, everybody's posting them as me. So I have no idea how many people actually are posting questions individually. So I got to figure out what I did. There's a lot of Davids in the room.
Yeah. Well, I am happy to say I'm not in charge of that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's me. I messed up somehow.
I'm not going to try to figure it out. Messing up, not messing up. It's just figuring it out. And congratulations on making it happen. Since yesterday morning, I said, we ain't got nothing. What do you want to do? Do something live? It was Carla's idea.
Thanks, Carla.
All right. We got any other questions to hit there?
Let's see. Before we close out, let me go back up a little bit. Here's one, and it might be, if it's too long to take here, we'll take it offline. But anyway, it's can you talk a little bit about breach reporting requirements with a limited data set?
Well, a limited data set, you still have the issue. One of the things in the breach report is you're supposed to identify what was included in the particular breach. Mm-hmm. So you have a de-identified data set, those wouldn't be involved. Limited data set just says you've got fewer elements of information, but if it involves PHI, you still have to report it. Just part of the report is what data was involved.
Okay.
I don't know. Need more input if there's something.
If that didn't hit it.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. As far as ransomware attacks go, the question is, are they over the head of the typical HIT skill set? Do we need companies that specialize in higher level forensics and safeguards?
Yes. I can tell you how many, I have sat in on, let's just say, a bigger number than I want to be part of, because now, we've got clients that have experienced it, and then law firms are now, because they work with one of our clients, then I've been called in to talk with technical people, the HIPAA parts for other groups. So I'm involved in about 4 or 5 different ransomware cases right now. And I can tell you in every case, even having been in technical world for 30-something years, I don't know many people that could do what has to be done to properly document the forensics. I know, well, let me put it this way. Many IT companies can get it to the point where they believe everything's good. In fact, a lot of the IT companies where you've got an IT company, actually a professional IT company engaged and it hits, they're able to prevent it and recover from it and doing all that good stuff. And they're able to tell, they're pretty sure you're good. Can they prove it so that you don't have to report it? No, not the level that it needs to be done. To say that we can see there's no exfiltration, we know exactly how it got in, and we know that nothing went out, and we know exactly how it worked and what it looked like and all of that. I would say you definitely have to have forensics, but I will tell you this. If you have cybersecurity insurance coverage, which everybody's kind of getting these days, you need to know what your coverage will cover, because sometimes you have to use specific vendors.
Oh,
there are only certain, your insurance company approves vendor A, B, and C. So now in our, we used to say, who's your insurance provider? What coverage do you have? How do you activate your coverage? And that would be part of your breach plan or your incident plan. Now we have to say, what does your coverage cover specifically? Down to, are there limited vendors you can use and all of those kind of things. So we have learned several things going through so many of them.
Okay. Very good. The last question, and I think it came in while we were talking about the resolutions and fines and all that good stuff. But the question is, does the FBI or CIA have a dog in the fight or in the hunt? I think it was referring to the resolutions and things of that nature.
The FBI has requested that everyone report ransomware attacks so that they can track them and investigate them and try to bring people to justice, so to speak, and mitigate the damages through direction, working with IT, the security firms, and whether it's the Ciscos and the Googles and whatnot, disseminating information about how we can prevent these things. But as far as anything they can do beyond that, it's directly related to what they can figure out. And one of the big problems that you'll always learn about in cybersecurity, first of all, the CIA isn't involved in any of that. They're not a criminal organization. Technically, they're, national security spy people. The FBI and the Secret Service are the ones that are involved in cybersecurity enforcement, or the legal ramifications of it. And they actually have to work with other governments to be able to get these people, because most of them aren't in the United States. So that becomes a very complicated situation. But they are doing a lot of things to make other countries find it more advantageous to turn these people over once we've found them.
Okay. Very good. That's the only questions we have. Anything else?
I'm all done.
You done?
I need a nap.
You made it through. I'm proud of you.
I didn't even have a coughing fit. Bam.
I know. That's like 2 days ago, you didn't have a voice.
Hey, look, do it, Dave. Super twin.
Which way are you?
Other way. Dude, super twin powers activate.
All right. So that's our show for today. Thanks everybody who attended live. And if you want to attend our next one live, then just get on our mailing list, be on the lookout. We'll send out some information about when that is. Maybe it'll be every week. Maybe it'll be once a quarter. We don't know. We'll talk more about this later.
Maybe it'll be never again.
Or maybe that. So, getting Donna to agree to being on camera is a thing. So thanks, Carla.
I had to, get out of my pajamas.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we don't know what you are from the, mid-chest down. You still could be having your pajama pants on. But anyway, that's our show for today. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Don't forget to share this out on your favorite social media platform. Also, you can visit us on the web at helpmewithhipaa.com. And if you want to, you can post a question there. We had a bunch of them coming today. Maybe we'll just start taking them this way.
I know, really.
But we can take them on the website, and we may feature them on future episodes. And again, thanks everybody. I see everybody who's saying happy holidays, and thanks for the great show. So appreciate everybody showing up, taking time out of your busy day to be here.
Oh, and thanks to Chris for that awesome email this week. Shout out to Chris.
Yep. Thanks, Chris, for saying how much you love me on the show. And Donna was pulling her weight as well. But
But we are taking into consideration suggestions for shows for 2017, and Chris offered some great stuff. So you let us know.
Yeah. So I will have to tell you, Donna, and I probably shouldn't, but I talked with Anton, who is a listener as well as HIPAA for MSPs member. And we were on a call the other day, and he made a comment about something to the effect of, you have to make sure Donna's in the podcast because she's the only one funny. To which I said, we're ending this call now. So thanks, Anton.
Love you, Anton.
Yeah. So anyway, all right, very good. So if that's all you have, Donna, we'll close it out.
I'm done.
That's good. All right, great. So just remember, folks, that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's not about being live either. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.